This week, news spread that the wreckage from the worst disaster in the history of the U.S. Navy was located. The USS Indianapolis was sunk by Japanese torpedoes in the final days of World War II, shortly after completing a critical mission.
Of the nearly 1,200 sailors and Marines on board, just 317 survived. Today, less than 24 of those men are still alive. And for many of them, the discovery of the Indianapolis in the Philippine Sea is the closing chapter in their war story. Don Dahler reports.
It's much easier to die than it is to live.
Edgar Harrell was an 18-year-old Marine when on July 30th, 1945, the events that would shape his life unfolded in an instant. A few minutes after midnight, 2 Japanese torpedoes slammed into the hull of the Indianapolis. The heavy cruiser sank in 12 minutes and no distress signal was sent. The crew had just delivered parts of the atomic bomb to Tinian Island and was traveling unescorted. No one was coming to help. For the estimated 900 men who survived the blast, an even more terrifying fate lay ahead. The survivors spent the next 4 days in the open water, battling blistering sun, dehydration, hypothermia, and warding off constant attacks from swarms of sharks.
A shark would be coming through the group, and he would take someone fairly close to you, take him under.
72 years later, and 18,000 feet below the ocean surface, the iron hull of the Indianapolis has been discovered.
That's it, Paul. We've got it.
An underwater expedition spearheaded by billionaire Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen located the ship last weekend.
For the first time, you can point at a place on the globe and say, here's where this ship is. We can now memorialize it.
Doug Stanton spent years interviewing the crew of the Indianapolis for his book, In Harm's Way. He says many of the survivors share a common trait.
At some point, they had been pushed to such a brink, such a precipice, that this experience of floating in this void of an ocean was a crucible. And they were really being asked, like, who am I?
The story of the Indianapolis has inspired movies, television shows, and books.
Lost 100 men. I don't know how many sharks, maybe 1,000.
Robert Shaw's character in Jaws delivers a chilling monologue about the terrors the survivors faced.
You know the thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes like a doll's eye.
And the film's popularity may have helped some of the survivors begin to heal.
That's one of the first ways that they really dealt with their own feelings about this experience. And also, you know, that movie is important because it's the first time Indianapolis moves into the American consciousness.
For the men of the Indianapolis, the ordeal of July and August 1945 never drifted far from their consciousness. But the discovery of the ship and final resting place for so many of their shipmates may provide the closure they've sought throughout the decades.
It still leaves open the trauma of that experience, but the fact that we found the ship now, that brings closure to the story of the Indianapolis.
For CBS This Morning, Saturday, Don Dahler, New York.
I'm so glad some of those veterans are still around to see that they found this ship.
Yeah, and in saying that the trauma will continue, but at least you've got that closing chapter to one part of the story.
Yeah. Our producer Brian Applegate told me at Mayor, he said that book In Harm's Way, which he read, one of the scariest books he's ever read.
Which is a good endorsement right there. I will be downloading.